almost broke out outside that courthouse when Jim Jones lost his temper and lunged at Cameron in front of a yelling crowd. This wasn't your typical Harlem dispute, though. It was treachery gone savage. Chrissy's darkest secret was revealed in court, and it hit Jim like a bullet to the chest. The entire industry was rocked by what Jim screamed at Cameron. Bro. Some people think Chrissy set it up and others are afraid to speak. This is what no one is telling you, though. Jim discovered that he had been treated like a fool for years. After seeing a leaked document and an audio recording that purports to capture the incident, why was Cameron there? Why did Chrissy stare at him while the judge mentioned being exposed? Why is everyone going silent now? Something significant? It's being concealed, but we're spilling the beans because once you hear what really happened, you won't look at them the same way again. It started with side glances and stiff shoulders outside the Manhattan courthouse, but no one saw Jim Jones lose it like this. Wasn't going to last long. At the center of it all was Chrissy Lampkin, whose name was once associated with loyalty and love in the hip-hop industry, but now carried the weight of controversy and murmurs. However, wasn't about rumors anymore. The evidence was strong, and the courtroom had just become the scene of a fight for which no one was ready. Cameron, a normally calm but unexpected figure, had been keeping a low profile. But that wasn't going to last long. The room went silent as the judge's gavel struck to signal the beginning of the hearing, and everyone's eyes were on Jim, who was struggling to make sense of what was happening. A court clerk brought him something, and when the paper was read aloud, it became clear that Chrissy Lampkin had been hiding something enormous. Jim got up, his voice full of genuine anger, and he said, "She's lying." Was all part of the setup, and although his fists were tight and his knuckles were white, nobody could have predicted what would happen next. Cameron, who had been sitting a few feet away, got up. His face was calm, but the tension between him and Jim seemed to be thick enough to cut through the walls of the courthouse. While everyone waited to see what would happen next, Jim was furious. "You knew about this. You knew what she was up to, and you never told me, did you?" His voice was like poison as the tension the two men's history and loyalty to one another flashed through their minds. Cameron, who was cool and collected, did not flinch. "Let's take outside," he muttered. His voice was as cold as ice. But Jim was driven by a combination of treachery. Jim wasn't going to let go without a fight. "Okay." And his words were piercing, cutting through the courtroom air. The audience looked skeptical of what was going to happen. Next, he rushed out of the courtroom, leaving behind a trail of rumors and speculation. Cameron followed him, apprehensive but determined. After they left the courtroom, the atmosphere changed. The usual rush and bustle of the courthouse grounds sounded like a distant hum compared to the intensity of the conversation. Jim was pacing, back and forth, his mind racing with everything that had just happened to him. Chrissy's betrayal was about everything they had built together, including friendship, devotion, and trust. "What the hell is going on?" Cameron Jones screamed, his voice rising. "She's been lying to me the whole time, and you didn't say anything." Cameron drew a deep breath, his expression impassive, and he said, "I didn't realize Jim was taking the wrong way. I've got your back." For a while, Jim's eyes softened. He didn't want to believe it. That someone he had trusted, like family, could turn on him like this. However, the evidence was there to refute it. "What the hell are we going to do now, Jim?" Cameron struggled to maintain his position. He didn't know the whole story, and his voice was firm, but there was a strain in his eyes. "Need to figure this out together. We've got to get to the bottom of this," Cameron said, lowering his voice as he went closer. However, just as he finished, a loud voice from behind them broke the tension, asking, "Are you two going to stand here and quarrel, or are we going to do something about this?" The paparazzi had arrived, and Jim and Cameron turned to see a group of reporters with their cameras trained on them. "Why don't you two tell us what happened in the courthouse?" One reporter cried, and another added, "Is Chrissy's betrayal the reason for the rift?" Jim's face darkened even more as questions started. to pour in. He wasn't in the mood for interviews, especially with the world watching, but the damage was already done. He said to the reporters in an angry voice. You have no idea what's really going on here, he said. And the more he yelled, the more the cameras flashed, capturing every detail of this developing drama for the world to witness. We can't keep doing this, man, said Hamren, pulling Jim aside as the group of reporters rushed around them. The world is watching. We need to stay ahead of this. Jim nodded slowly, his face stiffening. He knew Cameron was right, but there was something deeper that Jim couldn't escape. The betrayal wasn't just about Chrissy Lampkin anymore. It was about everything. The lies, secrets, and friendships that were now hanging on a thread were all part of it, and Jim wasn't prepared to back down. The two men were locked in their private battle, with the world watching every move they made. The betrayal had been exposed, and as the cameras flashed around them, it became evident that this was just the beginning of the storm. The events outside the courthouse were nothing short of a chaotic scene. With the media storm in full swing and all sources from the biggest gossip sites to local tabloids seeding up the drama, Jim Jones, however, was far from ready to let it go, and his phone buzzed. Cy took a long drag from his cigar and looked at Jim. You're right to feel that way, but don't let the anger blind you, man. You've got to think through. Jim's betrayal had hurt him, but the more he considered it, the more he realized there were things he hadn't known and things he should have seen coming. Man, I don't trust anyone anymore, Jim murmured as he stared at his phone as the messages poured in. Cameron stayed by his side. Looked up at Cameron, his face hardening even more than Chrissy's betrayal. Cameron said, Something's strange. This isn't just about her lying to you. There's more at play here. Jim didn't respond right away. Instead, he just looked ahead, his mind confused. He'd always trusted Cameron. They had experienced so much together, but now that the pieces were starting to fall into place, Jim couldn't deny the feeling that something deeper was at play. The two men walked along in silence for a few minutes until they arrived at the remote area of the voice on the other end of the phone said, You really don't know, do you? Jim's heart skipped a beat. What the hell are you talking about? There's more to Chrissy's tale than you know, with an almost pleased tone. Hey, what's the issue with Chrissy Lampkin? Jim Jones asked, pulling out his phone in the courthouse parking lot. Before Jim could respond, the conversation ended. He stared at his phone for a while, the words echoing in his mind. Things are about to become real ugly for you. What the heck was that meant to mean? He switched cameras and raised an eyebrow, his face a mask of wrath and uncertainty that wasn't just a joke. He clenched his fist beneath the Jim, his claws cutting into his hand. I swear, if she's been manipulating me, I'm going to make her regret it. Jim was about to continue when his phone buzzed again, this time from Chrissy Lampkin, not an unknown number. His pulse pounded as he opened the message, which said, We need to talk about not knowing the complete story. Please don't do anything crazy. Jim's eyes narrowed as he said, She's been playing me like a damn fool. Who is the threat, though? I don't know. But they know something about Chrissy Lampkin that might cause everything to fall apart. He could respond when another message arrived. Jim recognized the location, a small, remote area where he and Chrissy had spent many times. But this time, the stakes were different. It was about treachery, not love. He looked up at Cameron, his mind racing. I'm going, but I'm not going in blind. I need you to back me up. Cameron nodded. I've got you, man. But he acknowledged that he wasn't sure what Chrissy would say. But he was certain of one thing. Whatever it was, it wouldn't be Jim and Cameron. Later that evening, they reached the meeting spot, which was deserted except for a dim street lamp that provided light from a distance. Jim's hands were balled into fists at his sides as he walked toward the door. As they entered the room, Jim saw Chrissy sitting in the corner, looking calm but worried. Her face softened upon seeing him, but her eyes were cold. Jim's stomach twisted with uneasiness. What the heck is going on? You've been lying to me, playing me for a fool. I know you wanna... I'm listening to Chrissy groan. her eyes darting to the floor as if searching for the right words. "But there are things I couldn't tell you that go much beyond just me." Jim's eyes flashed with rage. Jim's eyes flashed with anger. "What do you mean? Don't give me what the hell is going on. I've been backed into a corner," Chrissy said in a shaky voice. "They've got dirt on me. Stuff that might ruin everything. And I had no idea. There's nothing else to do but accept it." Jim stared at her, his face displaying disbelief. "Who has been threatening you?" Before she could respond, the door behind them slammed shut, leaving the room dark. Jim's heart was racing. How it's happening? A stranger emerged from the shadows, someone who had been pulling strings behind the scenes. Jim never expected to see this person here, but the moment he realized the truth was more deadly than he had ever imagined. The tension in the room was palpable and Jim's pulse pounded. He was trying to comprehend the situation, but his mind was not able to keep up. His fist automatically tightened, and he looked at Chrissy, who seemed just as shocked as he was. "Who the heck are you?" Jim said harshly, and the figure didn't respond right away. Instead, they stepped into the weak light, and Jim could see their shape. As the figure took another step into view, Jim Jones mumbled in surprise. "They're standing. In front of him, none other than Cameron." Jim shook his head, his world spinning. "What the hell are you talking about? Considering you've been by my side the entire time? What's this about Chrissy's eyes, racing between Jim and Cameron?" "Jim, I didn't want to hurt you, but there are things that need to be understood." It's the same person who had been by his side through everything, the man who had stood by him when no one else would. The man who was meant to be his brother. "Jim, you don't know the full narrative." Cameron replied, his tone grim, almost menacing. Cameron's eyes softened for a moment, almost as if he felt sorry for Jim, but then they vanished, replaced by the stony gaze that had always been there when business was involved. "It's not a setup. Jim, it's the truth that I've been working behind the scenes for longer than you realize." Cameron's voice grew cooler with each syllable, as if Jim stumbled back, his head swimming with the shock of it all. His longtime friend, the one person he thought he could trust, had been betraying him all along. He had been working behind the scenes with the very people who were trying to ruin him. "You've been working with them?" Jim said, his voice barely a whisper anymore. "Yes," Cameron said, his voice dejected, "but not for the foreseeable future." The weight of his confession was finally lifted off his shoulders. "I never intended to hurt you either." "For what reasons do you believe that you have been the target for a long time, Jim? You were the key to bringing everything down, and I was the inside man, feeding them information, watching your every move, and giving them the opportunity to make their move. But now, what do you mean?" Jim's voice was shaky, and his emotions were running high. "You think you can just walk away from me after everything you've done?" Cameron's eyes locked onto Jim's with a cold resolve, saying, "I'm done with them, but I'm done with you as well." Jim could react when he heard a motor engine roaring outside and saw that Cameron was acting impassively as he beckoned for Jim to follow him. The abrupt change in tone, which was cold and detached, rocked Jim to his core. "What's going on?" Cameron said, turning his back and marching towards the door. Jim stopped there for a while, trying to process everything that had just happened. His mind was racing, going from one unexpected concept to the next. What was the bigger picture? There was a black SUV with tinted windows waiting in front of them. Jim's heart fell into his stomach as Cameron said, "We're getting out of here." He was so naive about it that he followed Cameron outside, unable to shake the feeling that he was walking straight into a trap. "And you better be ready, Jim. This isn't just about you anymore." Jim's gut twisted as he approached the car. He wasn't sure what to expect or who to trust anymore, but one thing was certain. The driver, who Jim couldn't see, started the SUV, and the car started moving in silence as they drove through the dark streets. The tension in the air was palpable. Jim kept his eyes on Cameron, trying to read his expression for any clue that this was all some sort of twisted joke. But there was nothing as the car came to a stop. The two men got into the back of the SUV and the door shut behind them with a heavy thud. With its windows boarded up and covered in dirt, Jim's nerves were tense. Senses were hating what was happening, and he didn't know where they were taking him. The door opened and two men who appeared to be waiting for them escorted them out. Cameron led the way and Jim followed, his head racing. Jim didn't know where they were going, but the sense of dread was almost overwhelming. Jim entered the building and found himself in a dimly lit room with a long table in the middle, surrounded by a group of people whose faces were hidden by shadows. Jim's heart was racing. Jim's eyes widened when he realized who it was. The man's voice was smooth and frightening. "Don't tell me you're engaged in too," Jim said, barely believing what he was hearing. "Yeah, I'm more than involved." The man responded with a cold sneer. "This is only the beginning, Jim. You're going to find out the truth, the reason everyone's been playing you." The room fell silent as Jim realized he was much deeper into something than he had ever imagined. Wasn't just about Chrissy and Cameron. This was much bigger. There was no turning back. So there you have it. Jim Jones was betrayed by the person he trusted the most and led him into a world of deceit, corruption, and treachery that goes deeper than we could have ever imagined. However, the question still stands. Who is really behind all of this? What is their goal? And where does this dark path lead from here? We have only touched the surface, and trust me, isn't done to miss what's coming next. But justice always finds a way, right? Do you think Jim Jones will eventually get justice? Is he able to fight his way out of this? Or has he already lost the battle? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. Your thoughts could change everything. I also want to know what you think about the truth being revealed like this. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any more surprises or insights. I want to be here for the next explosion update. It's just the tip of the iceberg, so keep an eye on it and stay tuned. Sometimes the hardest realities are the breathtaking ones. To accept the capture, see you later.